Welcome, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. Glad you can join me this morning. Um, it would seem to be that the things we're searching for as humans, um, whether in a kind of a spiritual context, enlightenment, God, realization, awakening, or just a human context, love, well-being, and so on, that our tendency is to we imagine that we're going to find that which we're looking for in particulars, in a particular set of experiences or circumstances or moments, right? And then when we encounter those moments that we associate with that which we're searching for, I found it. I found it in this particular flavor of experience. That's great. And then we, of course, encounter other moments because the moments never hold still. They're always slipping away. We encounter other moments that we imagine are somehow evidence of the absence of what we're looking for, the absence of freedom, the absence of love, the absence of well-being, the absence of God. And this tends to define a lot of the human search for the things that we search for as humans. And really, the whole of my work is about helping helping us to discover that the wholeness we're looking for is found in the wholeness. In other words, it's found not in particulars, but in every particular, if you will. So if you liken, so I'm just going to mute you guys. All right, great. We'll use my favorite metaphor of the sea. If we liken the whole to a vast ocean, and the sea is a wonderful metaphor for so many reasons, but water has that dynamism. It's so obviously dynamic and fluid, and this very much is the nature of what's here. It's fluid, isn't it? So just feel the fluidity of this moment, the watery nature of this moment. And this is the whole. This is the whole of reality right now, is like a vast sea. And just feel that. Feel this aliveness that's here, this existence, this beingness. And as you sit here with your eyes open or closed, it doesn't matter. What happens is this miraculous mystery we call attention tends to focus in on elements of the field, aspects of the field, of the vast field of experience, the sea of experience. And it's suddenly sensing or seeing or feeling a particular dimension of it, a particular aspect of it, a particular wave, seemingly. And as we sit here and the various waves of experience arise and pass away, which is their nature, to arise and pass away, and arise and pass away, just allow that to be what it is, which is this unstoppable dynamism, this fluidity. And just for these moments of sitting here, there's no need to do anything whatsoever with anything that's arising. No need to manage it whatsoever. No need to take the waves and turn them into something. No need to figure out what the waves are. No need to try to control their arising and passing away, which we can't really do anyway. So the waves are made of water. Their nature is the water, the sea of life itself, aren't they? Every single wave, every single thing that we might call a thought, every single wave that we might refer to as an emotion, every wave of experience we might call a sensation, every sound, every sight, every tactile sense, every flickering of memory, every imagined scenario, all of it, all these waves of phenomena are none other than the sea, aren't they? They're none other than life itself, none other than the whole of existence. For the waves are simply the sea's expression. They are none other than the sea, aren't they? So there's no need to regulate or control or alter any of the waves in order to find the sea, right? Because the waves are the sea, they're made of the sea. And so doing something about the wave doesn't make it more the sea of existence. Every wave is none other than life itself, none other than existence itself. Feel the way that that is so. No wave that might be encountered brings us closer to the sea. It doesn't work that way. For every wave is the sea. So there's never any departing from the sea. There's just the waves arising and passing away and arising and passing away. All of them, the activity of this ocean of existence, this vast, boundless mystery we call life. Every single wave is that. So as consciousness or attention or whatever sort of travels around the vast sea of experience in all of its seeming distinctive wave-like appearances, the seeming pieces of the sea, discrete, seemingly differentiated, seemingly separate from other waves, identifiable as waves. Just see that no matter where consciousness travels in the sea, this infinite sea of reality that we are abiding in right now and abiding as, that no matter where consciousness travels in the sea, it always finds the sea, doesn't it? It always finds a different flavor of the sea, a different wave-like emanation of the sea. This is what's so extraordinary, is the distinctiveness, the uniqueness of each moment. And yet it's always the upwelling of this mysterious sea of life, of presence. And so we can completely relax and enjoy every wave, for each wave is none other than the force of life itself, the force of this that has no name, has no definition. And yet appears as all names and definitions and descriptions. We imagine when certain waves arise that we have to fix those waves somehow. We have to alter them in order to be okay, and in order to feel at home again, to feel at peace again, to feel connected with the ground, with reality, with but that's not true. We're connected, inseparably connected always, no matter what waves are appearing, because the waves are the connection with reality, because they are reality. So it's just an innocent misunderstanding that the waves have to be manipulated somehow um, in order to find what we're looking for. So what we're looking for is this. This is the only thing that exists. So it has to be what we're looking for. Um, there isn't anything else. There's just this. And yet this is not static either, is it? This is constantly revising itself, updating itself in each instant. Each instant it's fresh. This is why there really are not discrete things, despite what language suggests. Because how can something that is dissolving no sooner than it appears, how can it be a thing when it's on the move? How can it have any definite form or shape? I mean, it looks like there's forms, but the forms are dynamic. And so in a sense, there is no set form to anything, because everything is reforming itself each instant, literally. Like, so the forms are not really forms. Nothing's holding still. Feel how extraordinary that is, that there's this constant, it's like a unfolding, like a ceaseless unfolding. It's like always at the crest of the waves, always cresting into the next, into the next. It's never quite like, oh, now it's stopped. It stopped unfolding. It's just frozen there. It's like, no, it's always opening. It's like blooming. It's always blooming, never stops, just keeps blooming, unfolding. That's the fluid flow of reality. It's quite something. And it's so counter to how we conventionally think of things, as having a kind of static, stasis, fixed, identifiable shape and form and definition. But our experience is contradicting that in every instant. Experience is not conforming to our ideas about it, because our ideas suggest definition and description and frameworks of characterizing things as being like this, but they are not like this because they're on the move. That's why we can't define anything. And that's freedom, freedom from all the descriptions and all the definitions and all the identifications, and absolute freedom from all of that. Reality is free of all of the ways it describes itself, which is funny, but because it's doing all the describing, but it's free of all its descriptions. It can't be bound. It is not bound in any of its definitions. So we don't have to alter this moment to be home, because every moment is home. Every moment is the home of existence, showing up as that particular version of itself. We might prefer certain versions of reality over others, certain versions of life over other. That's seems to be the case. But every version is none other than the way reality is expressing itself in that moment. So the privileging of certain aspects of reality over other aspects is just a misperception of the wholeness of this, the singularity of this, the indivisible nature of this. Just like the sea, indivisible. And yet showing up as all this apparent separation and distinction. Very paradoxical.
It's even more paradoxical than that, in the sense that there is no ocean showing up as waves. There is no something behind the something that we see.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. Yeah, those words are, they're possibly evocative of something, but that's the thing, is you can't, whatever is most basic, we could say, or most fundamental or most primal about this can't be pinned down, it can't be located, it can't be described. And so in a sense, there's not much that can be said about it at all. I mean, any way to try to designate it would be wrong. That's just how radically transcendental it is. Yeah. Quite something, huh? And true of every moment, every experience, everything that we might call a moment or an experience. The paradox is that it seems to show up as something identifiable. I mean, that's how we have a world of apparent form, right? It looks quite patterned. It looks quite like this and like that, and feels like this and like that. And in some sense can be described as this and not that, for sure. And that's the whole world of language and description. And you look at the visual field and it looks like these identifiable objects, but it's just this seamless field of light. And what light even is can't really be said either, as you're pointing out, like that. The singularity can't be characterized either. It's funny because, I know sometimes when I'm presenting this stuff, it can come across as abstract, and it's really the polar opposite of abstract, actually. It's actually concretely not concrete. it's substantially insubstantial. Like, feel the insubstantiality of this. It's not an abstraction. It's an actuality. It's present. You just can't find it. Which is
John, can you hear me? Good morning.
Hi, Michael. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to be back with you. Can only stay for a little bit because I have a conflict. The conflict with another teaching that's only lasting one more week. But anyway, so yeah, it's I guess it could be described as insubstantial. Yet experience is vivid. Experience is not is not.
Very vivid. This moment is like shockingly vivid.
I mean, pleasure is vivid, pain is vivid.
Absolutely.
So it's not something that I would, if I labeled it as insubstantial, it might be, and this is just, I'm just speaking for myself.
Yeah.
But it might be a gesture from my side to whitewash it as uh, not very powerful, but
Yes.
it seems to have tremendous power to entangle and to
Mm.
seduce and to terrify and so forth.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
uh,
It can be very,
maybe
yeah, it can be compellingly um, definite. Like it's definitely like, okay, you're in pain. Physical pain is maybe one of the more powerful examples of just how substantial it can seem, just how substantive it can appear to be, right? Like you're telling me this is insubstantial. It's like, this hurts, it's like, this hurts. I'm in pain. So,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely, no question about that. And any other version of the vividness, it doesn't have to be pain. I mean, pleasure is equally vivid, right? So, and distinctive, seemingly distinctive from what we might call pain. But this is the
right.
interesting thing. I mean, just as an example of what I'm pointing to, I don't think I shared this last week. Forgive me if I did, but um, I was taking a bath, and I suddenly became aware of some event in my life, and there was this kind of wave of what I would call sadness, this wave of sadness that was arising. Okay. And it was pretty vivid, to use your word. And so, just because of whatever, the way I seem to be uh, inclined, was like, well, here's this wave, like, and there was just this natural sort of curiosity about what that was. It was almost an immediate description of it as sadness and a recognition of a familiar flavor of experience that I would characterize as sadness, right?
Hmm.
And then there was just this sense of, just as I was guiding in that little inquiry of like not making any effort to change that experience into something that I might prefer, like fix it. No effort at all, but rather just check it out, experientially, like feel what it is, feel what's actually there that I'm calling sadness and I'm describing, in other words, as I will often say, what is sadness? It's a label of something, like something's there, present, palpable, undeniably actual as an experience. But what is it that's actually there? So I just explored that while I was, and all of this happened in a matter of seconds, quite frankly. And then there was just this sense of sadness just being um, something utterly indefinable, a presence that was there at the same time, not pin not pin downable, not resolvable at all. And if I had to characterize it anyway, I would just say it was this kind of energetic presence that's just absolutely transcendental, and yet not in any kind of um, amorphous sense, or any kind of like palpably palpably insubstantial, as I was saying. And it was like seeing the other side of the coin, as I sometimes say, the other side of the coin of the description. And that other side was just pure beauty, pure aliveness, pure vitality, showing up as sadness. One side of the coin, sadness. Absolutely, there were tears. And yet it was just absolute vitality of existence, unfathomable at its basis. I mean, that's amazing. And it's always the case. And that discovery is available in every wave-like experience that arises. We have that opportunity to become curious about what all of this stuff is that we're describing, and seems to be what we're saying it is. And at one level, it is what we say it is. Sadness is sadness. It's not joy. But what I'm getting at is what is it that all of it is made of? What is this life force, if you will, that everything is constituted of. And that, of course, is not describable.
But I mean, John, from a certain point of view,
Mm-hmm.
isn't the whole condition of life really very sad? I mean, growing old, getting sick, dying, having bad things happen. You know, look around the world, and there's just so much suffering, so much.
Mm-hmm.
The pandemic to uh, very unethical or corrupt people in different governments. So just right on down the line, that's if one ponders that,
Mm-hmm.
the natural response would be sadness. It's not something to feel joy about.
Well,
So,
a couple things I would say to that, Michael. One is that some of what you're describing, true as it is, we could say, is a function of where attention happens to be focused on too. Because even if we're just dealing in the realm of descriptions, the seemingly describable world, as you're talking about, because all of it that you said is based on descriptions. There, at the same time as there is all of that, there is all of this extraordinary creativity and beauty and love that's happening in the world in every instant. So it's partly a matter of where attention. I mean, the world's falling apart, you could say, and just wars and famines and climate change and pandemics, and there's just this exquisite beauty that I'm sitting in the midst of right now too. That's equally true as well. So at one level, and this is kind of you could say sort of finding a kind of well-being by playing around with where attention is going, because we have a certain amount of flexibility in terms of, a moment of intense rumination where attention is fixated on some concern that we have can shape our experience in that moment, right? And we potentially have some freedom, if we feel as if we do, to move attention to other aspects of the field of experience that aren't defined by that. In fact, have nothing to do with that rumination. So that's one response. That it's partly a function of where attention is, what attention is grasping hold of, that can shape our sense of, well, is this a beautiful world or is it a fucked up world? I mean, it's a little bit of both from that described perspective. But I'm even going a little bit beyond that, or a lot beyond that, to say, well, yes, from the perspective of the seemingly describable world, there's just tremendous vulnerabilities and lots of horror and difficulty and death and destruction and mayhem, and all of that's there, right? And from this other perspective, there is just absolute, sheer, radiant, transcendental, inconceivable beauty at the basis of all of it, the entire show. And that's also real. That's also discoverable as another perspective that's as real as any, if not more real, if you will, than this all the descriptions. And so it doesn't exclude the descriptions. It's inclusive of everything, because it's the totality. So of course it includes everything that's described and all the perspectives that you could say and implications that arise out of our descriptions, including the things you were talking about. I mean, that is part of, we could say, the radiance, part of the light show that is reality, for sure. But it's not the whole story. So I'm interested in the whole story, that this absolute reality that we could say is the basic nature of every moment. It's beyond the descriptions, and that brings forth a different experience for the human. It's like suddenly I wasn't just experiencing sadness, I was also experiencing the transcendental beauty of the universe. That's kind of nice. I would say, now I have access to this other dimension of reality. There it is. It's always there. It's potentially always accessible. It's just a matter of looking a little bit more carefully at what's actually here and not assuming that we know what it is because we've got a label for it. Consciousness has a label for it, and then away we go down the rabbit hole of implication, seeming implication based on all those labels. I'm a subject in a dangerous world. Those are labels. They're not untrue from within those perspectives, but they're not the whole story. And that's really all I'm pointing to, this other
Mm-hmm.
vantage, which is, I think it's ultimately accessible because it's what we're made of, you know. I was thinking this morning when I woke up and I was just contemplating like the word absolute, and I may get around to it. I was like looking up dictionary definitions, and it's really quite something to see how the word is defined. But I was like, well, I was going through this like little inquiry lying in bed, like, well, how could this finite creature possibly comprehend absolute reality? Well, that's ridiculous, right? And then it just like hit me like, you know, over the absolute reality, like, you know, hit me over the top of the head, like, well, you are the absolute reality because everything is absolute reality. So it's like, of course you can comprehend the absolute reality because you are the absolute reality. Everything is that. There was this sense of like, yeah, that we can know this. We can know infinity, not in the sense of like John, the personality, if you will, but reality can know itself because it is itself. It has the capacity to know itself because it is itself. Our consciousness is made of that. I was like, oh, yeah, right. I mean, this consciousness is made of, well, who knows what it's made of? It's made of what?
I guess.
It's made of what consciousness is looking for. We're made of what we're looking
for. I guess what's prompting the question is, if I were to only say contemplate or experience, say, insubstantiality or emptiness, then that would seem one-sided. Where I'm at now, I wouldn't feel right in say using that understanding or having a one-sided perspective, only taking into account that side of the equation without letting it inform the ordinary world of relations. A person who, say, only was only abiding in emptiness or something like that, was oblivious to ordinary life. That wouldn't seem complete. That wouldn't seem like real freedom.
Well, I hear you, and I think I'm always encouraging people to not. I mean, it's fine to pose such queries in a kind of philosophical sense of like, you know, but as it applies to you, you know, if there's a specific concern you might have, that sort of exploring that absolute perspective, if you will, that's free of language and conceptualization and transcends it, is somehow going to cause you to not deal with your life in some way. If that's the concern, well, then that's something I think that can be that's more interesting to explore because it's really relevant to like where you're at, you know, in your own life, and maybe that is a concern you have. I don't know, but I mean, my experience is that because it's not two worlds, it's one world that shows up, we could say, in two different ways or many different ways. Then it's sort of like there's a sense of if one discovers this transcendental perspective I'm talking about, well, they might be inclined to sort of want to hang out there in a certain kind of way, like a Ramana Maharshi, sit on the mountain, in a diaper and
Mm-hmm.
and you know
Mm.
not talk for years and years. I mean, that might be how they're inclined, whereas another person might be inclined to suddenly, I don't know, build a business or create music or um, have a love affair or have a child or who knows what, who knows
Mm-hmm.
how one, that's
Mm-hmm.
so individual, I think, as to one, how one is moved in one's life. And um, I would say, at least speaking completely personally, that that the process seems to be one of a natural kind of integrative process where one just continues to discover that it's not two separate worlds. In other words, that the full experience of being a human in a world of time and space and relationships and work and children and is none other than the transcendental. So in fact, the transcendental is found in the apparently non-transcendental world. The transhuman world is found in the human world. And so they're not in any kind of struggle or contradiction or conflict with one another. And that feels like maybe that's what you mean by the completeness, that it's not
Well, I mean,
privileging one perspective over another necessarily, that it's
it's said that, I mean, maybe some people who are on the call may not be familiar with the traditional perspective, let's say in
Mhm,
Mahayana Buddhism,
mhm,
and maybe in say in the Indian paradigm in general, including what would usually be called Hinduism and Buddhism.
mhm,
But the, in the bigger picture, beings, you and I, everybody who's present this morning on the Zoom call, and everybody, all people, and other uh, types of beings,
mhm,
we've all been in every conceivable relationship to one another. These beings have been our mothers, our fathers,
mhm,
our spouses, our children, and uh, to say, okay, I guess if one manages to actually have some transcendent realization
mhm,
and established in the quality of peace, and think, okay, I've I've accomplished that, or in a manner of speaking, I've
mhm,
come to that. But I'm out of here, and the heck with you. Your dukkha, your dissatisfaction is your problem.
mhm.
That just doesn't seem. Again, it doesn't seem like a complete response to reality. The the the
Mhm.
the, um, the sort of debt that we have to each other, I just it can't be denied. It can't be. You can't use the perspective of emptiness to deny the relative the relative um,
Mhm.
uh, reality, and I say relative as a loose
Mhm.
adjective, but just the reality of that we're human beings or whatever type of beings, and that has its own dynamics. That has its own uh, that brings to the table a whole set of conditions and uh, uh, um,
Mhm.
aspects that I at this point I can't say okay it's all emptiness that doesn't really matter
Well,
that
yeah, no, I hear you, Michael. I would just say, I mean, you could be concerned about it. I appreciate the concern that you're voicing about that, and maybe based some on observations of other people. But I would just encourage you and everyone to just um, see what happens. In other words, explore reality and let let that discovery take you where it takes you. In other words, and that's an unknown. And my own experience suggests that it's really just only positive, that it's a discovery of the basic nature of this feels inherently beneficial and seems to show up in my life as an enhancement of my personal life, an enhancement of my relationships, enhancement of my capacity to navigate reality skillfully. I mean, that's just how it seems to be. Again, another person might choose to withdraw from the world,
or
as their
or
particular
or,
inclination.
or,
Who knows?
or yeah, or I mean, dare I bring this up? But
Mhm.
even use, say, the sense of being at one with everything and being
Mhm.
beyond everything as license to one up everybody else and get into some weird cultic
Yeah, I
trips.
mean, yeah, and I, I don't want to belabor the point, and I want to
Sure,
allow other people to talk as well, but just
sure,
to
of
kind
course,
of bring this to a little close, that
of course.
the people will do what they do, and how much control do we have over what other people do? We can take care of our own, our own orientation to this, and
Hmm.
if and show up how we're inclined to show up in the world, in the context of exploring all that I'm inviting us to explore here. And
Hmm.
if people will do what they will do, I happen to feel that when you see kind of craziness that appears to unfold from people who have purportedly realized this, I think a lot of times it somehow becomes something of a concept for them. I don't. I feel like that the nature of this, it doesn't. That's my own perspective. The nature of this is not one that's. It feels like there is an actual spontaneous benefit that flows forth from it. Actually,
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
not inclined to harm. That's not inclined to. And so, but there's all sorts of possibilities for humans to get caught up in ideas about this and little sort of eddies of perspectives that may be, in a human sense, not all that functional. So, but
Hmm.
yeah, but I wouldn't worry that too much about that. I mean, for our purposes, it's really, I'm really just wanting us to, let's just really explore what's here and the
Hmm.
extraordinary
Hmm.
nature of it, and then discover for ourselves how that shows up in our human lives. And
Hmm. Hmm.
um,
Well,
yeah, yeah. Thanks,
that that
Michael.
that sounds wise.
Yeah.
All right, John, I have to get
All
on the
right.
other calls.
Thanks,
Sorry about
Michael.
that.
No
I think
worries.
week after I'll be able to stay for the whole time.
All right. Good
But
to hear you.
thank you, thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.
Hi, John.
Hey, Bill.
When I was waiting for you to come on today, I thought about last week when I pictured that scene in the airport when you were telling the Hare Krishna person that he was Krishna,
Mhm.
and um, and
Uh-huh.
how that met with an adverse reaction.
Yes.
And then when you started talking today, I flashed on that and kind of spontaneously took a picture of Krishna that I have on the windowsill, and put it right here in front of me, and was concentrating on the picture, and your voice and Ed's voice and Michael's voice all just seemed to be coming out of this picture of Krishna.
Mm.
And it's a picture that I came across years ago, and I got some foam board and some construction paper and some glue, and I kind of turned it into a personal expression. And the the picture of Krishna was on photographic, good stiff paper, and I was able to glue that on because it was stiff paper. Uh, there really aren't very many imperfections in the gluing technique. But when I added construction paper, which is much thinner, I wasn't able to get the firm bond. And just today, as a matter of fact, the sun's coming through the window and landing on the picture, and so the Krishna part is just perfectly flat, but the construction paper, because it wasn't perfect, the sun on it really gives it, you see every little ripple, and it's the wave that you were talking about, with the calm sea in the middle with no waves, just like a calm ocean on a windless day, the picture of Krishna. And it was just a beautiful metaphor. And it's not a crystal clear sunny day with no clouds. It's the sun is coming and going, and so the picture's always changing. So that what look like big waves when the sun is out full, as it becomes a little more cloudy, those waves become less visible.
Always changing.
Yeah.
Always changing. And it's it's wonderful to find these kind of reminders and examples like you're pointing to. And what's nice is that the reality of our actual experience, without any sort of metaphoric reminders, as beautiful as those can be, is actually that is displaying that right now, isn't it? That very nature of the wave-like nature of this, and the way in which, I mean, it's interesting, like if you take something like the calm depths of the sea and the churned up waves, frothy waves more at the surface, it's a single expanse, isn't it? And it can show up in our described experience. The waves can show up, the momentary waves of phenomena can show up as relatively placid and calm and serene. And sometimes it's tumultuous and agitated and stormy. But at the basis of the serene moments where the ocean is seemingly kind of still and placid, and the tumultuous, turbulent moments, at the basis of both of those descriptions is something that's entirely beyond description, isn't it? Entirely fathomless. It is in that fathomless nature that is the peace that passeth understanding. It's a peace that is not only or merely present in the moments of serenity and placidity. It's the peace that's present at the heart of tumult, at the basis of agitation. Now that's very interesting, because our tendency, again, as I was talking at the outset, was, agitated mind, agitated energy field, tumult. I don't like that. It's discomfortable, very natural. I want to come back to some kind of stability, some kind of peace, some kind of serenity. So I do something to try to, often to manage the agitation, to get the agitation to calm down, or to maybe move my consciousness somewhere else that's not agitated. But it's very interesting to look at something like the tumult and agitation and explore, like I did with sadness. Okay, well, what's at the basis of this? What is that? What is the agitation made of? What is the frothiness made of? Well, it's made of ocean, isn't it? It's made of the wateriness of this reality, which is, of course, I'm just throwing metaphor out of words, but it's all made of this same inconceivable, ungraspable, unnameable transcendence. And there, in the depths of every instant, which are not anywhere other than permeating the surface, the depths aren't separate from the surface, so-called, is made of depth. So the depth is what everything is made of. The deepest, deepest depth, absolute depth. That in that place, where there are no pieces, there are no parts. There's not one thing pushing against another thing. There's just one thing. There's not one wave crashing into another wave. There's just an ocean expressing it as all this diversity and all this differentiation. From that perspective, that is a piece that is beyond all understanding, beyond all comprehension. And it's right here. There's really not actually just a person navigating all these waves. There's just an ocean. And in that sense, there's not someone looking for something else. There's just this. And so it's absolute peace. It's a peace that has no opposite, non-peace. It's the peace that is beyond all understanding, beyond all comprehension.
When you had that experience of sadness and the tears, when you were sitting in the ocean, or rather the bathtub.
Yeah, that little ocean, yes.
What I'm curious about is how intentional was the inquiry at that point? I mean, because your point of view, you've been at it for so long, and it's become, I hesitate to use the word habitual, but it's become such a foundation of your being. Did it just, amidst the tears, did the awareness of being in the ocean more or less spontaneously arise, or did you need to take action to deal with the tears, or something in between?
Well, it's funny how all this stuff kind of works together in a beautifully seamless way, in the sense that all the explorations and the things that I'm talking about, just continuously reveal that everything is it, and everything is this divinity, this singularity. And it seems like part of the sort of result of that, if you will, is that there's less and less of an inclination to, or less and less of a tendency to see what might arise in a human context that I might have historically thought needed to be fixed. There's less and less of an inclination to do that. It's not that I don't take action to solve problems that I think of as problems in my life, but there's more and more of a natural kind of organic, spontaneous sense of the non-problematic nature of everything that's arising. And so there's often less of an inclination when something like sadness arises, or, for example, or nervousness, of like, oh, like the alert signals go off, like there's a problem, this has to be fixed, or this is evidence of something's missing, some incompleteness, and much more of a sense of this is the radiance. And so then there's this, and then there's this opportunity that did in that case happen pretty organically. I guess there was some, I could describe it as some amount of intentional, like, curiosity, like, well, because sometimes moments like that can stand out in their intensity. So there's kind of like, right? It's like, oh, wow, has an intense flavor to it in a sense. And, but yeah, there's just this natural curiosity of like, oh, yeah, just to notice the basis of it somehow, the inconceivable nature of it. And I would say over time that seems to, if I put it on a timeline, that's more and more spontaneous seemingly, and less, okay, now it's time to do inquiry, but it was definitely not to make it go away,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. Because in a curious way, I find that the discovery of the other side of the coin, so to speak, the transcendental side of the describable coin, seemingly describable coin, allows a certain kind of, makes room for, somehow facilitates a kind of enjoyment of the human describable dimension of life in a way. It's almost like the sadness then didn't go away. It just became sweet in a way, rather than some problem that needed to be fixed. It was like, oh, it's like, this is the expression of, this is God, literally, like literally, because what else could it be?
Bittersweet, maybe.
Yeah, it's very paradoxical again. It's like, you know, it's just got a different flavor. It's not necessarily a state I want to be in all the time, you know, in a human sense. But yeah, in many ways, one way to think about it is like, you know, every moment is like, it's kind of got a multitude of perspectives within it. And there is this transcendental perspective. Perspective's not the best word because it can sound very analytical, and it's an experiential perspective. Yeah. And it changes the whole ball game to begin to get a sense of how every experience, no matter how seemingly describable, is ultimately not describable. It just changes. It changes everything. It really does.
Thanks for sharing that experience, John.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's very helpful.
Thanks, Bill. Is there any places in yourselves where you, your own encounter with the stuff that we're exploring, that you find yourself, feel like places where you are not maybe clear, or you find yourself that feel like obstacles to your own understanding of this at all? Maybe not.
Was that question just generally to the group
Yeah.
or to me?
No, to everybody.
I couldn't tell.
Yeah, to everybody.
Yeah.
Hey, Pat. I think you're muted.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. So thanks for that question. It's such an open perspective, to use that word. It's hard to argue with. Certainly hard to find any. I can't find any fault in it. It's so wide open. It brings up things in me for sure. I mean, I love the message, I really do, and I've seen it in numerous places that I've gravitated towards it in my own life. There's an interesting thing that happened to me. You don't know this about me, I don't think, but I used to play music too. In fact, I live in Colorado. I came to Colorado because in the early 70s, Colorado was purported to be somewhat of a happening place musically. And it didn't turn out to be that way. And the friends that I was playing music with back in Ohio, where I'm from, moved to California. So I used to migrate out there often also and hang out with my friends who lived in Oakland because it was cheap. And I loved California. But it only took about maybe 2 weeks at most before I had to get out of there. And the story I told myself and the metaphor that came to me was the place was so unstable. I mean, there's so many people, everything's moving constantly, including the ocean. At my age at 21 in that place in my life, I didn't want any more instability. So I moved. I would always come back to Colorado, Boulder area, and it would always feel stable and at home for me because those mountains seemingly didn't move. Right. They were just like these gigantic sentinels that just stood there, you know, very peacefully holding space for, you know, if I could put it in context, for all the stuff that I was going through as a young guy, trying to figure out my place in the world. So, you know, flash forward decades later, I'm much more comfortable with things being in flux all the time. And, you know, I think maybe when I tripped across the message of just allowing things to be as they are, especially in context to the spiritual search, you know, that maybe I'm pursuing this in the wrong kind of way, trying to get somewhere or get something, then maybe I could just not do that and see what happens. And that was powerful. And, you know, a radical shift, a radical difference in teachings than I'd been, you know, listening to prior to that. So, you know, maybe back to your question, I'm certainly more comfortable with it, the message and the perspective.
With the intrinsic instability of it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's obvious. I mean, you
is obvious.
You don't have to be around too long to realize you're not as in control as you think you are or would like to be. That things just do what they do, and you either roll with it or else, you know, you struggle with it. And I don't know. I'm not much of a struggler, so it's easy for me to.
That comes in handy. Well, it's funny, you know, the stability and instability thing is interesting because it seems like we have an impulse in us to find something stable, right? Something that can be counted on in a sense. And yet here we are in this ever-changing, flux, fluid, unstable
Mhm.
situation that I mean, everything coming and going relentlessly, right? Where is the
Right.
stability? It's just swept away, like in an instant, everything's gone. So there's no stability in a sense, but it's very interesting. And in a very real way, that's the stability. That's the stability is the instability. In other words, that's the ground, that groundless, unstable, seemingly unstable, dynamic, fathomless, moment by moment flow of experiencing is, you can feel that. It's like you can count on that. It's its own stability, isn't it? It's its own reality.
It is.
And that's real. We search for stability, and then we want to try to find stable situations and circumstances and experiences, right? But we always fail in the realm of form to find stability, because that's just not the nature of form to remain stable. It doesn't take a long time to see that. It can be seen right now, right? So, but this is again a kind of this curious paradox of the stability. To me, is it's found both in what's real. That's what can be counted on. We want to count on it, so we can count on the fact that it's slipping away. But what's curious is that there's this sense of something always being here too.
Mhm.
Presence is stable,
Mhm.
not as it sometimes will be talked about in the contemplative traditions. Oh, there's this presence that's over here that doesn't move, the screen, and then all this stuff that's dancing on the screen. I don't experience it that way at all. I experience there's just one thing that looks from one perspective like, and can be experienced as complete radical instability. So it's always coming and going and coming and going and coming and going. The ocean's always making waves that appear and then vanish and appear and then vanish. But it's always being an ocean. In other words, it's stably always being, reality is always being itself. The totality is always being the totality, even though it's showing up as all this that's arising and passing away and arising and passing away. So that's, in that sense, the mountain is a metaphor for that kind of stability, even though the mountain itself, even though it's quite slow, is gradually transforming itself in every instant, isn't it? It's just slower, so it appears to be more stable. But the real stability is, you know what? Even when all the mountains vanish, this is still here. The mystery is still here. It's always here. It's not dependent on things being stable. It's always the ocean doesn't matter. It doesn't matter from the perspective of the ocean what the waves are doing and their apparent tumult or calmness. It's still the ocean, isn't it? And that's a stability that's the presence that never comes and goes, right? It's the presence of what is. What is never comes and goes, and yet it's always changing, seemingly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's amazing. That's, to me.
It is, and that's a little bit of a new. I listened to your podcast from last week, and you iterated that point about presence and the presence of presence as not this static thing that's present. I mean, in some teachings, presence basically gets reified, and that's the new goal. Let's find presence.
Exactly.
That's where things are stable.
Exactly.
That's the end goal. Find presence. It's a thing. It's a thing, state, and let's get over there because over here is not so great.
Exactly. Well said.
And I heard you say this last week that about presence, you weren't seeing it as using the screen and the images on a screen, that you weren't seeing it that way. You were seeing presence as the presence of, I don't know if I heard you right, but the presence as reality in this form constantly changing. That's
Right.
that's what is that accurate? Is that
Yeah.
what
You know, um, I I like to use the word "this" sometimes to describe reality. It's a non-loaded term, you know. I could call it God, but that has a lot of connotations to it. So let's just call it
even
this.
more loaded? Yeah,
Even more. This isn't very loaded. It's just this. Whatever this
yeah,
is it a
right.
dream? Is it an AI? You know, is it, who knows what it is? Is it a
Sure.
quantum,
Hmm.
right? Who knows? A
Hmm.
0 point that's appearing as time and space.
Yeah,
But something's here, isn't it?
something.
Something's here.
Hmm. Hmm.
Something's present. Something's apparent.
Hmm.
And what's here is always here, even though it's a shapeshifter.
Hmm.
And that's, to me, it's one thing that is constantly, seemingly
Hmm.
wearing a new costume in every instance, so to speak, but always being itself, always being
Hmm.
itself. Um, and so there's no, and we're not like, it can be, it can be subtle sometimes where we can hear this and contemplate these things and sort of be sitting over here seemingly like contemplating this reality of, you know, this singularity, like somehow it's sitting over there, but it's like we're looking at a picture somehow of how reality is. It's being described to us by this guy, you know, on the Zoom call, but actually it's whatever you think of as yourselves, whatever we think of as ourselves, minds and bodies and personalities, are that display of that. So that's what we are. We're not looking at it, we are it. And that's
Right.
a big difference. It has a different feel, doesn't it?
It does. And I think that's a key point, what you just said there, that often gets, I don't know if overlooked the right word, but missed somehow, that it's still a duality paradigm. There's me, and then there's all this changing stuff and
Right,
blah, blah, blah. And we're left out of the mix.
right.
Like I was just having an online conversation with somebody the other day where they were saying something about the aliveness of life. We can't deny that. I mean, you could substitute that word presence, the
Sure.
presence,
Yeah.
aliveness. It's happening. And then in the midst of that, this conversation about aliveness, all there is aliveness. I'm paraphrasing. They weren't exactly quite saying it in those words, but there's this a disclaimer, which is the me. The me can kind of obscure it. And I'm kind of like, well, I'm not the me's just, for me, the me's just another expression of this aliveness that's happening.
Exactly.
And yeah, sure, anything can seemingly obscure it, but seen maybe from this perspective, and check me on this, but seen from this perspective, even the obscuration is the aliveness, is the presence. It's happening.
Absolutely.
And yeah, you can, not see it in its entirety. I'd say most people don't, because they are looking at things as things and, describing and caught up in appearances and trying to manipulate this, manipulate that. Yeah, sure. That, and, I'm not in charge of that.
Apparently not.
That's definitely seems to be happening. And that's part of the show, part of the Amazing Light Show.
It truly is. It truly is part of the Amazing Light Show.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
so to me, I'm not sure when people bring up, the topic of obscuration, what obscures this? I mean, yeah, sure, concepts, mind, labels, whatever, sure, all that could possibly, in one definition of how this can be, could you could not, definitely not see it. Seen from the perspective, none of that obscures anything. That's all part of it.
Yeah, that's why in there's a couple of meditations in my last book where I play with that idea of distractions, and from one perspective, there's things that can arise that are somehow distracting us from that understanding, let's say, obscuring it in some way, right? because attention gets captivated by something and imagines storytelling and all of this, right? Imagining
Sure.
we're separate creatures in a world. And but to play with this sense that, an experiment with this sense that everything that arises experientially is the shining forth of the reality. And so
Yeah.
then there are no what we call obscurations and distractions are simply the way the shining forth can appear. And then where are the distractions? There's only reality.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And, you know, to take that even one step further into the, you know, realm of, you know, actuality, that does not, like you were saying earlier, that doesn't stop me if, like, I've got a headache, I'm gonna take some Tylenol or something. I'm not just
Absolutely.
gonna say, oh, that's the way it is,
Yeah.
and that's the way life is flowing, and
Yeah.
you know, it's all part of it. Yeah, all that's true, and so is my wanting to not have a headache.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
mean, if Hitler showed up again, to bring in the Hitler metaphor, I'm probably not going to be okay with that. I'm probably not going to say, oh, that's just, you know, Hitler's a beautiful, or another manifestation of this. And yeah, that's true. And I'm not really actually probably going to,
Right.
you know, be into that.
Right. Which would also be the expression of your nature, of life's
Exactly.
nature in that moment.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we're back to the kind of, it's just so inclusive. And so, you know, what can you argue with about this perspective? I don't find any argument. Anyway, thanks for
Thanks,
indulging
Pat.
me.
It's great to see you. Yeah.
Nice
I just
seeing
wanted
you.
to, Julie, I just wanted to respond to your question, and it's, you know, it's kind of a big one. And I don't know if you want to say anything about it, or if you just like me to say something about it, but you want me to just say something about it? Okay. Yeah, so there's certainly it could come back to the wave ocean metaphor. There can definitely be human experiences, wave-like experiences that are particularly intense and, if you will, triggering, as you say in your message, and also can be experienced as so all, you know, so intense and overwhelming that we just feel like we can't come up for air somehow. Like there's no, like we sort of feel as if we're tangled up in that or lost in that, and can't kind of get our bearings. And how did you say that? You know, that unconsciousness, sort of lack of reflection takes over. And what to do about that. So just pragmatically, there may be moments where, you know, there isn't anything to do about it, in the sense of, like, it's just there and that's the situation. And even that, even taking that stance towards it, if you will, can be freeing to some degree, to say, this is what's here right now. This is the weather that's here. And so that is one experiment to, like, when what we might call triggering is happening, whatever it might be coming out of, like, say, trauma or something. It's like, this is what's here now. And what is it like to, here's the wave that I'm riding seemingly right now. What is it like to just ride this wave? Like, that is one possibility that may not feel possible, but maybe it's possible to orient to it in that way. Another that is also possible, and it all depends on the moment, is that the particularly captivating waves, whether they're particularly pleasurably captivating or painfully captivating, that can occur, what happens is attention focuses in on that, right? And it's like that becomes what seems like the only reality, or practically the only reality in that moment. The pain, the worry, the rumination, the fear, as you said. And this is the power of attention. It's amazing how it powerfully it functions to create a kind of reality of sorts, sort of to shape our experience of the moment by what's being attended to. And it can often feel like it's just happening completely out of control, you know. The next thing you know, the mind is just absolutely fixated on some aspect of experience, for sure. But maybe in those moments, if one can find the wherewithal and the capacity to move attention, to relax that attentional focus from that which it's zoomed in on, and begin to recognize how much else is occurring experientially besides that. And in fact, what might feel like it's absolutely the whole universe of your experience in that moment, because it's so big, the wave feels so big, it's still an infinitesimally small part of the field of experience. So there's, if you had the ability to sort of step outside of it and catalog all the other things that are transpiring experientially that have nothing to do with that, that are in no way defined by that fear or that trauma or whatever is that you're describing that's arising. The light, the color, the shapes, the sounds, the textures, all these other things, an infinity of phenomena that are occurring. And that's just one tiny part. But that's what attention does, right? It's like it seemingly blows it up and it feels like it's filling the whole field and there's like no room for anything else. So its experience is overwhelming. But it's like recontextualizing it. You can do that if you can, one can in such a moment, by just moving attention to some other part of the field and seeing, wow, you know, look at the color over there. It's almost like a skillful distraction of sorts where it's not a distraction that's operating by pretending as if the trauma or the fear is not there. It's just recognizing it's not the only thing there. In fact, there's a whole universe that's there. So that's like another tool that can be potentially powerful in those moments. And then the third is if one feels like, if you feel like you have the wherewithal to do it, as I shared in my story, I mean, I wouldn't say that the sadness that was arising in the tub was overwhelming in that sense. It didn't feel like that. But in a moment that feels more overwhelming, what is there a possibility of exploring what it is? You know, what's the fear made of? What is fear made of? Maybe fear, which can absolutely seem like this demon overwhelming that we're a victim of somehow. What is it actually made of? What are the particles of fear that make it up? And that exploration can reveal that it is not the threat we imagine it to be. It's not. It's just life force itself, inconceivable life energy, showing up in a particular way, in a particular pattern, seemingly, you know, not to minimize its impact, but it's like discovering the non-problematic nature of the state without denying the experience in any way, because there's no need to deny it. That's why there's no need to deny it, because it's not merely the demon or the problem we imagine it to be based on our description of it. And so that's another, sometimes I remember one time talking to my dad, who was having a lot of physical pain, and I was inviting him to inquire what is pain made of. And it was too much for him. The pain was too much. So that approach was not really helpful in that moment. So it just really depends on your particular situation and in the moment that something's arising as to what might work the best, so to speak, to find a sense of more freedom in the midst of that state. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. Yeah. I'll say one last thing about that, and then sign off together. But now this might be particularly difficult when the waves feel big and overwhelming, the waves of experience. But a big part of what makes it feel like our experiences like are happening to us and we're at the mercy of those or the victims of those experiences, that whole sort of way of structuralizing it is based on the view that we're separate from the experience. In other words, we're over here as the subject and it's an object, albeit, let's say, internal to us, that is affecting us, right? So it's like this onslaught that we're like, right? It's happening to me. So this is easier, arguably, to play around with as a perspective when the waves aren't so intense. But to just feel like right now, as we're sitting here, that your experience isn't over there. Your thoughts and feelings aren't over there, and you're not over here sitting observing them. That's one way to talk about it, maybe even a helpful way sometimes to gain some space from it. But another perspective that's very real and can be experienced is that there's not a subject and an object here, a subject of an experience and an object. It's just experience. And so there's no separation there. And when there's no separation, there's not someone to be threatened by anything. There's just experience. No subject and object. No division. Which is like the ultimate paradox of like, wow, the way to find the way that it's not a threat to me is to realize that it is me. How could it be a threat to me? It is me. My fear is me in that moment. It's an expression of me, the vast me. And then it's not a threat. It's just, in that moment, your song. In your moment, your expression. Thank you all for joining me. Wonderful to see you. And have a beautiful rest of your Sunday. Thanks for joining.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, John. Thanks, everybody.